Mitzvah Tzadi Zayin. Hamitzvos Aseh v'tishim he shetzivonu liyos mitamim b'shmona haminim min hashrotzim. Now, the translation over here is, I can't say exact. The little translation I heard from the those that I think know, it should probably be his tamus shmona minim min hashrotzim. As we've discussed, all the mitzvahs of Tumah are basically histamus, and it's the state, I assume, the state of Tumah. And when he translates it into Hebrew, but he is translating in the Min HaKotz, he says liyos tomeh or something like that. The Rambam has said something, made a statement over here, because he talks about minim. He could have said very simply, liyos shmona shrotzim b'shmona minim min hashmona haminim min hashrotzim. Here, it seems to be clear in the various form of the Rambam that the word minim is to be taken seriously. Not only has it here, but he has in Hilchos Shabbos HaTumois, Perek Daled Aloch Yedaled, Ein Lecho B'chol Hashrotzim Mashitam B'moisei Chutz Mishmones Haminin Hamufoshim B'Torah. And the Pirush HaMishnah, in Akdoma to say the Tairis, he writes, V'tumas sheretz yesh bo av echod bilvad, v'hi she'asheretz atzmoi hu av hatuma, v'shem ze kloima sheretz ne'emar al kol echod mishmones haminim amun b'Torah. And he gives a list. So this is serious. The question that we probably should be thinking about is the word min in the Torah was not formulated by all the shrotzim, but it was always formulated by tzav, where it says lemineu. So it becomes a little strange that the Rambam should go out of his way everywhere to stress that the tumah is a tumah of minim, and that the word min was only formulated by tzav. And the tzav in the Monchulin, similarly in Teres Klanim, but the Josh is a little different. In Kuf Chav Zayin and Aleph, Tona Abon Tzav Lemineu Lohovi Aloid B'Chena Nefilim V'Salamandra. Then an aside, the Mishnah Melech asked on the Rambam of Asatumas in Perek Daled Loch Aleph that the Rambam is mashmit that there's a tomb by Arod. I just want to, let's say, be a Sefer Matik. The Aruch HaShulchan HaOsid in Hilchos Shabbos HaTumas, Siman Kuf Lamed Aleph, Siv Gimel and Daled, says that the Ram didn't find it necessary to mention all the various expressions in the Shmona Shotzim and the Minim of Shmona Shotzim. The Vadai b'chol min yesh kama minim. V'ara achbo yesh achbo the Davo ve'achbo demosa ve'ushnei minim heim sheesh noisin tam l'shvach וזה נויסי טעם לשבח, וזה נויסי טעם לפגם, כי ניסה בלזור, interesting, that if it's טעם לשבח, it must be different min, בסדר? וכן, I'm skipping a חולד, יש חולדס הסינים, שיש סופק אם הוא חי או שרץ, כדסנם בקלויים, which is a very odd comment, you know, I can't say I understand this, but my point to comment on this, if it's a subword, it's a chaya or sheretz, l'chayra, then it shouldn't be under the shmona shorts. I'm not getting involved, you know, that's out of my purview now. Chulas hasinim, metame kizayis mamasa mishum sofik chaya, okay, v'ich kadasha b'maga mishum sofik sheretz. That's what comes out in the Mishnah. It's called, but that's the min. If it's only a suffix, how about kochel? Diesh kama minim b'chol v'achwa. I don't see the proof in that, but okay. V'vadi b'chol min kachu the whole min sheba kodesh baruch hu yesh lo prote minim how be k'amin b'chol and sama gimel beis. May oifes tmeim yesh b'mizrach b'chol min ayo hein kmo she'onu royin b'tanagolim minim how be. Okay, say that. That's the point I'm interested in. Nearly finished daiti boro. The labi b'nei sheyesh boy kama minim. The zeh yesh no b'kulam. Okay, so there's something in sov which is not in other minim. El mishum de b'tzov milsa achrita yesh. Sha'oime shom lemineu lohovi arod. V'aminu b'chulin shom omev huna pam achas holachti levad v'roisi nochosh shekoch al tzov liyomim yotza arod mi beneim. So it's a claim of minim. K'shebosi lefnei Rabbi Shimon hachosid omali HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Omar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Heim, Omar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Heim Eviu, Birya, Shaloi Barasi Ba'olami. V'im kein, yesh min atzov HaKova Shal Shnei Minim, v'zeh eno kishar shotzum. U'l'chein ksiv kan lemineu. So this is an interesting comment. I'm not sure how you koveya the min, you see, in the din of let's say like this. Let me just say it for a second. We find in Yotzim and Atome Tome and that depends upon the mother, and that the two din of Chaim points out in Sefer. There's one din of a din Yotzei like Cholav and Beitzim, and there's another din which is completely dependent, Kfiyas Aminim. So Kfiyas Aminim is after the mother. So since it's a tzav, you wouldn't need exeris akosim. We have to understand what happened over here. And then there's a question, achosh lezera'am. Well, it's a father, whatever it is. So I'm not getting involved. There's an amazing thing going on. It's an hakov of two minim that, you know, there's a sepik zezakosuf, and that it is tamei, and that's all very odd, okay? But whatever I'm going to tell you, so it's making his case worse. If Kufa, there's a chiddush that's not the Poshet Minim, but it's Kilo Klayim, and that Klayim has as a Vade Tuma, but Teres Saab, the Rambam should have mentioned it. So I'm not sure exactly what the answer is over here. In other words, if you accept what he says, a Taurus Aminim, you have to evaluate the issue that Yoitzim in a Tome, and how that would play itself out, or would it only, maybe it's only behemoths. We have to know exactly where the Din Yoitze was formulated as far as Kvis Aminim and what's going on with Shortzim. But that is beyond the scope. I just wanted to point that out. That's one. Now, and then he does again what he does before, in that mitzvazu koleles tumas sheretz u'mishpatel. Okay, which we mentioned, we discussed already. Mitzvah hashmona v'tishim he shetzivonu lodun betumas oichel u'mashkin hadinim haksuvim. Now, before I even talk about anything, that's Tzadik Ches. Tzadik Tes, the mitzvah is each devono liyos anida tmeya, which is histamus anida. In Kuf, each devono liyos hayoledes tmeya, which is histamus hayoledes. Kuf Aleph, each devono liyos odom mitzvah tome, or histamus tumas or the Mitzera. Kuf Beis, Hishizivonu, Liyos Beged Mitzera Tome, or Histamus Beged Mitzera. Kuf Gimel, Hishizivonu, Liyos Bayis Menuga Tome, Histamus Bayis Menuga. The same thing in Kuf Dalid, in Histamus Azav, and Kuf Hey, Histamus Shechazera, Kuf Vav, Histamus Azova, Kuf Zayin, Histamus Tumas Meis. Okay. Now, there are two anomalies in the mitzvah of Tumas Eichel, because first of all, it doesn't say Histamus Oichlin Umashkin. That's not the mitzvah. But it's Lodun. And secondly, he adds a phrase which you don't find in the other mitzvahs of Tumah, which is, he adds Hadinim Haksuvim. So we have to understand what exactly happened here. Here, I'm going to depart from the general approach that I usually say what the Rambam Shita is, and then I probably sometimes might tell you what the Baal Halacha Gedolos is talking about, or Sadigain. Okay, I'm going to do just the opposite over here. What I'm going to do is discuss the Bahag and Rav Sadiga, and I go to the Rambam. And the reason for this is very simple, at least for what motivated me, because I understand the Bahag, and where the Bahags come under Rav Sadiga. But if I were asked in the backdrop of the Ram's general shitas what he should say, I would have said very different. And it's interesting here to compare everything. Okay, now, here we go. First, before we start, there are 3 parashas in the Torah, back to back, okay? There's a parsha of Tumas Nevela, but Tumas Nevela in Tmeim. Then there's a parsha of Sheretz with an amazing number of dinim in it. And then there's a parsha of Tumas Nevela from a Tehera. Okay, and let's just read the parashas to understand what's in front of us. It starts it's in the end of Shmini. Ule'ela titamo kol negei b'nivlosim yitmar erev. V'chol noisim b'nivlosim chabez b'godov v'tomer erev. V'chol ha'behemo asher hu mafreses parasa v'shesa einenu shoisas v'geire einenu ma'ale tmeim heim lochem. Kol negei b'hem yitmo. He's talking about Tumas Nevela from a Tmeya. V'chol oich ha'kapov v'chol chaya holeches al alba tmeim heim lochem. Kon we gave the blossom yitman erev. But they say the blossom, Michabes begodom. But Tomei ad ho erev tmeim heimo lochem. So that is Tmeya. Then v'zelochem hatomei b'sheretz hasheretz ala oretz. Hachilid v'ho'achabo v'atzov l'mineu. It was a mineu. Va'anoko va'koich va'alto va'choyme va'tinshamas. Eile hatmeim lochem b'chol hasheretz kol nogei b'hem b'moisom yitmo. So it's a tumas maga aroev. Before there was a tumas masa, now it's a tumas maga. That was a tumas masa in the velo, and here's a tumas maga in sheretz. Sheretz not matam b'masa. Now the Torah is not satisfied telling you that if he does a tefillah, he's tall. And that is the end of the dinim of sheretz, the same way we end the dinim of nevela tmeya, or the way we will end the chiyomus min habehema asher hi lochem leochol nogei b'nivlosa yitmo ado erev. Okay, so that's good. So the tumor and the towel from the tumor and the tumor olive. Now, after this, the Torah basically tells us the dinim of kalim, klietz, klicheres, tana b'kirayim, and tumas echur mashkin in the parasha of sheretz. It's not an isolated parasha, but in the parasha of sheretz, and the tumah that the tumah that is being placed. I'm not sure exactly what the proper verb of tumah is. The tumah that is being placed, I'll use it for lack of a better word, on the klicheres, it discusses. The tumah that is on the klied, klishetif, the klicheres, the oichel mashke, and it tells you about mayim bo mikaman, that it's not makabel tumah. And then klizer zerua. So basically, if you read the parasha, it's talking about how the sheretz interacts with kalim and oichlim and mashkin. V'chol hasheyipol olav mehem b'moisom yitmo mikol kli etz o beged o sach kol asher kol kli asher esem locha b'hem b'mayim yuvo v'tomei ado erev. It means it's kli shetef kalim that have a tayre mikvah. V'toy. V'chol kli cheres, which it's not a kli doesn't have tayre mikvah. Ashiyip omem el teichai, the tumas teich of kli cheres. Kol asher b'seicha yitmo v'yisishbal. There's no tar. Mikol, then it told about tumas eicha. Mikol eicha asher yochel asher yovol of mayim yitmo v'chol mashke asher yishoser v'chol kli yitmo. Then in the middle it goes. It went to tumas eicha or mashkin. Then it goes to Tana B'Kirayim. V'chol asher yipo milivlosam all of Yitmo, Tana B'Kirayim yutot, Tmeim heim u'tmeim yilochem. So Tuma from Tana B'Kirayim. And also Sheretz, V'chol asher yipo milivlosam. Achmayin ubo mikve mayim yiyetoho. V'nogei b'nivlosam yitmo. We have to know what it's talking about. Mayin, how many things there? Mayin ubo mikve mayim. Okay. V'chiyipom nivlosam, I'll call zera zerua, a separate discussion of zroim, and it's separated by a mayin ubo mikve mayim, and by Tana v'kirayim, and it says v'cho v'chi yipom nivlosam al kol zera zerua she'izareya tohu v'chi timayim al zera v'nof milavosam olav tomehu lachem. So the parasha, we always look at them as disparate phenomena. Interesting. The Ram says, we'll see this. That's not for now, but the Ram says that he discusses in which mesechtas you find the din of various tumors. So when he's trying to find the din in which mesechta is devoted to tumas shortzim and maybe nevela, the answer for sheretz is kalim. Okay, good. So that we have. Comes the bahag. There's a bahag and a sadigun. The question is this: you get the impression that the Torah wants to tell you there's some relationship between tumas sheretz and tumas oichlin umashkin and tumas kalim. So comes the bahag and does an amazing thing, which the truth is a very simple thing. He says, he puts all this Elu Parshis Chukim Mishpotim HaMesulim LaTzibur, Yud Aleph, Parshis Tumas Nevelis, V'taras Nevelis, Tumas Shortzim, V'tara Sheretz, because the Parsha talks about the Tumah and the Tara. Nevelis, Tumah and Tara, Sheretz, Tumah and Tara, V'tumas Kalim, Odom, V'oichel Mashkin. And the interaction between these various tumas to Kalim, Odom, and Oichel Mumashkin. So what he does is, what I would assume what he does is, since the note Sivuyim, it's a disparate list of dinim in the parashas. So was Machadesh, there's such a thing as parashas HaTorah. And the parsha, you can assume under that Tuma and Tyra from the Vela, Tuma Tyra Sheretz, Tumas Odom, Tumas Kalim Odom, and Oichan, the Mashkin from the Sheretz or the Vela, whatever. Since there's no Kumvaseh over here. However, and there's no Tumas Oif Tomei, doesn't mention it. Because in the Vedas, I don't know, but he doesn't mention. So you have to know what he means, V'tara Sheretz. See, it could be that he means Tuma Sheretz and Taris Nevela. He's not talking about how you become tall from the Vela, but those Nevelas which are Toho, and those shorts in Milamosim which are Toho. I'm not sure what he's referring to. Okay? However, and that could be Taris. Then in the Mitzvos Aseh of Kumbaseh, the Mitzvah Kumbaseh, he has the following. In Kuf Ayin Aleph, Utfilo Bismana. So there's a mitzvah of tefillah. I guess he assumes he passes tefillah Bismana mitzvah, at least in the minyan. And the rest are just dinim, disparate dinim, and he puts them in all together in a conglomerate parsha. Okay? That's understandable. He can parshas with Tumah because Tumah is really only a law, religious legislation, only a law in the Torah. So there's no reason it should be a mitzvah, especially you define Mitzvos Aseh as Kum Vaseh. So basically, the Bahag has done what you'd want the Ram to do, but the Ram is not prepared to do that because he doesn't want to create a new category, Torah Parshas. Okay? So that I think we can understand. Comes Rav Sadi going and does just the opposite. He has Perek Sheni, and Perek Sheni is the Perek of Chivas Tefillah on man who is Nitma. And it's like I assume other mitzvahs. And in this, he's moine separate mitzvahs, hanitma min nevela u'misheretz, 2 separate mitzvahs. Because it says in the Torah that in each of the cases that he's toho ada erev, and even though if you look at the parasha, doesn't talk about the goof, but he assumes that whatever, that there is it. And then by Sheretz, it says, call the game by having Moisam Yitmar Erev. But he says, what's the magic? So there's an assumed sivui of Tefillah. He almost made a veil, but the game was the Yitmar Erev. So it doesn't say before the tefillah, but he assumes that if it's Tomei at Erev, that there's a tefillah there, and that's a mitzvah, and he has it in Perek Beis. Perek Zayin is a whole new world. In Perek Zayin, he counts in Yonik Tuma. And he commits, in the Rambam's frame of reference, the same crime, or the way he interprets the mitzvah should be counted, he counts fikah as separate mitzvahs. So all the different aberrations, all the different expressions of how Tuma Sheretz expresses itself are separate mitzvahs, which is reasonable, l'shitosai. So therefore, he has the following mitzvahs. Besides the tefillah of Nevela and Sheretz and Perek Beis, he has number 1 tefillah's kli shetif, which includes all the various kelim which have tefillah mikvah. B'chol hashipol olav mehem b'moisem yitmo b'kol kli etz or beged or sak kol kli asher yeser l'molocha b'mayim yuvo v'tomer erev v'toyer. Shiur kli cheres, a separate mitzvah. B'chol kli cheres asher yipol mehem el teicha kol asher b'seicha yitmo v'yoyses yishboyer. Gimel, another mitzvah. Tumas oichel umashke. Mikol ha'oichel asher ye'ochel asher yuval of mayim. Yitmo b'chol mashke asher yishase b'chol kli yitmo. He doesn't mention the hechsher, but he says tavshil. Then he has 3 mitzvahs. Hey, I'm going to call him Hey Vav and Zayin over here, just for my counting purposes. Taras Mayin, Taras Bo, and Taras Mikveh Mayin. And Mayin and Bo are different. Mayin is Mayim Chaimim Noivim, which move, Moishchin, move from place to place. Bo is Mayim Chaim Noivim, a Be'er Mayim Chaim, but doesn't go anyplace. And a Mikveh Mayim is some type of collection of Shu'uvim, which is what we call a mikveh. 3 separate mitzvahs. And he says they are not Makabel Tumah and they're Matayeh. Mayim, Bo, and Mikveh Mayim. Then he does the amazing thing. He has another mitzvah, Tumah Zera. And it's only in a Zera, which is wet. I don't know if it has to be still wet or not wet, okay? V'im, okay, fact. That's not, let's open up for a second. Perek Zayin, here we are. Now, when he talks about the V'imnofal al ma'achol umashke going tafshil v'lechem, how hu tomeh. He doesn't talk about how it had hechsher, doesn't have hechsher, is tafshil and lechem. Then v'imnofal al zera, it's a different mitzvah, go chitu se'ir v'eires im hoyerotuv tomeh, v'im hoyeyovesh loy, ki oimu v'chipo minivlosam v'chur. Mayim al zera. He also has, see it. Yeah, I didn't mention to you, I'm sorry. I see, I have it here. I thought of Netitzas Tana V'Kirayim. Another mitzvah, okay? So what he does is takes the whole Parshas Sheretz and plays it out with the figure, all different all different expressions of Tumas Sheretz. Which, from his point of view, I understand. Okay? No, the Bahag has not acted any different than what we would expect him to do. And Rav Saadia Gaon has not acted differently in any way to expect him to go. Okay? The interesting thing is the Rambam. Now, before we get started, let's ask ourselves what the Rambam should have done. So I would have assumed, if I had been the Rambam, in his general, I'm just looking at his general frame of reference, l'cheira, he should have said that all the parsha of Sheretz is an expression of Tumas Sheretz, and it should go into the Protei Dinim of Tumas Sheretz, and it should be a mitzvah of Tumas Sheretz, which is understandable, okay? There's another option, and in that option, I would have assumed that you don't count, you count neither Tumas Eichlin nor any type of Tumas Kalim. And you count the Tumas Sheretz. And these are expressions of Tumas Sheretz. And this goes back to the other question, the old question of whether you count, do you count Tumas or not? No, Rambam counts them. That's fair. Okay? That's fair. However, the Rambam does something which is going to have a difficult time explaining, puts Tumas Oichlin Mashkin in Minyan Hamitzvos, but not Kalim. And the question is, what's the difference? Okay. See, any way is possible, but to have a steer Minei Ubei is very odd and requires an explanation, to say the least. When the Rambam lists the tumas in the Akdama to Pirush Mishnayis, he does not list Tumas Eichlin. I would assume there's a very good reason, because it's not an Avatuma, and he doesn't list Kalim, But I'm not sure that's a kasha. But this is what we have. Because the Rambam over here in the mitzvah you're dealing with quotes and says that there's a mitzvah called Tumas Eichlin Mashkin. And no mention at all about Tumas Kalim. So the Rambam is aware that he has a problem, and he somehow is taking care of it. Okay? not talking about he's trying to take care of it, because he changed the nusach of the mitzvah. It's not histamus oichel mashkin, as I pointed out, but it's lodun betumas oichel mashkin. That is number one, okay? And then he adds the strange sentence, which he doesn't have in the other mitzvahs. It's lodun betumas oichel mashkin hadinim haksuvim. So a priori, I would have said, Adinim Aksuvim is, and the principle, if you think about it, Lodun, the Rambam set up the principle of Lodun, and he said in Mitzvos Aseh that all mitzvahs which are Lodun, Hafos the Dorim is the model. Okay, is the paradigm. And he says the mitzvah is lodun. And he says be'er, he says pirish hakosuv be'er dinim. And he says this is lodun, upirish hakosuv be'er dinim. Exactly like a forced adon. Okay. So that's what you have. And Kalim are not mentioned at all. And the truth is, there are more psukim that deal with Kalim. There's Tano and there's, there's Klishetef, Tano, and there's Kirayim. Okay? Excuse me. Klishetef, Klicheres, and Tano Kirayim. 3. You start asking questions. Maybe there are Tumas Kalim which are not mentioned in Shmini. And he says all the mitzvah tuma are mentioned in Shmini, Yoledes, whatever, and Kisazria but so good. So you'll find in Mates is there's an explanation of Klimatris. Is that a reason that it shouldn't be Mina mitzvahs? Interesting. In the prote mitzvahs, maybe that's why he holds Kalim to the end of the Tumos before he mentions Tyler Mikvah, because he got like this. The second to the last is Hilchos Tumas Eichlin. Mitzvos Aseh achas v'hi din Tumas mashkin v'eichlin v'hechsheron. See here, he does the same thing of Tumah. He makes all the Tumah in Mishnah Torah din. And in Tumas Mashkin Eichlin, he doesn't differentiate. Okay. Hilchos Kalim. So Ram has to be very apologetic. What do I have? I set up the halachas as I did in Hakdama, in Sefer Mitzvos, in order to organize the mitzvahs according to the halachas. And here I have a group of halachas which have no mitzvahs. So he says, in elu halachas, leda kalim shemakabel tuma mikol elu hatmeis. It's not limited to any one particular. It's mikol elu hatmeis. V'kalim she'enon mistamin. So what he's done is listed all the tumas from Hilchos Tumas Mes. Din tuma this, din tuma that, din tuma that, and I'm not sure Kalim. I'm not sure exactly how he fits it. Goes to the Oichel Mashkin, because Oichel Mashkin not makabel take Kalim, not matama Kalim. They're Iceland anyway. The Kalim she'enon mistamin. The Ketzah mistamin ha'Kalim or mitamin. But he doesn't have anything more to say, because there are no mitzvahs here. And both Kalim and Sheretz don't have their indigenous tumah. They are not Tmeim. they're makabel tuma, but why she mechalek between the two? So you understand why he moves off. It's not his tamus of tuma sheretz, but it's not his tamus of oichel mashkin, but it's lodun because be'ah kosuv v'yosak bedina. But the same discussion could be also in Kalim. That's what he writes. The dinim haksivim, hadinim haksivim, which is very, very, because he's referring to be'ah kosuv v'yosak bedinim. Perish hakosuv v'yosak bedinim. That's what the Ram says in Afos the Dorim, Mitzadi Hey. And that is, according to him, the paradigm of the mitzvahs of Shirana, which are Lodun. Now, here, you should basically make a case, and you ask the question, that maybe Tumas Eichel doesn't fit into the category of Mitzvahs Tumah, because we set up in Mitzvahs Sadivov that you have to have a nafkamina in Shiluach Machnes, Bias Mikdash U'Kadoshov, and that doesn't express itself in Eichel Mashkim and in Kalim. You could say that that's the Isi, has it Isi, which you don't know where it came from, to be Nageya in Kachim. We don't know what it's talking about because the mitzvah Siga is Achila. We have to understand that anyway. But you might use that as an explanation of why it's not, the mitzvah not estamos, but we still, I don't know if we're brighter. And the truth is, in Machne Sheretz, in Kalim, in Tumas Kalim, you have a case of a chiyuv of Havos Keli Lazor. The Ram in Perek Gimel Hilchos Bias Mikdash Halacha Tezayin Hamachne Sheretz Kiyotze Bo BeMikdash O Sheichnes Adam Tomei LeMikdash Hari Zeh Chayev Koros Shari Timi Mikdash Hashem Aval Zer Kalim Tmei LeMikdash Afilu Kalim Shnogu B'Meis Potem En HaKeres Aval Chayev Malkus V'im Lo Yichab Ishenema Shelo Yichabes Pir Shmuel Lamdu Al Chitzes Gufa On Koros V'Al Kibes Begodim Loik Albayim. So we have to ask ourselves, when he was talking about the various mitzvahs in Tzadivov, where he says, "Mitzvah hu adin asher nistavinu b'dinim elu v'noima lono ki mi shenoga b'zeh nitmo v'naseh tomei b'chayiv ma shechayiv atmeim," which l'chayr a reference to Tumas Mikdash. Lot says chutz Lamachne Shechina, Ushlo Yochal Kodesh, Ushlo Yigaboy, Ukiyetze Bakach. You see, the odd thing, if you look at it, is referring to people. And that's, but you can't make that case statement because this also includes Tumas Beged Benuga and Batim Benuga. And so we're just very confused. What's the statement over here? We understand that, but the nafkamina is in Shiluach Machnes in Bias Mikdash. He doesn't say Dafka Bias Mikdash. Masha Chayov Matmeim Lotzen Mikdash Shelo Yochal Kodesh Shelo Yigaboy. So that is what we have here. Now, Hamitzvos Hatesha v'tishim he shetzivon aliyos anida tmeo his tamus anida mitzvah koleles Tumas nida mishpatel Kulam. Mitzvah kuf. Mitzvah mashlemes hameya. He chitzivonu. Lios heyoledes tmeya. Histamus heyoledes. Mitzvah zu koleles kol mishpatei heyoledes. Interesting, the Seder is Tumas Nida, Tumas Yoledes. Then he goes to Adam Mitzeira, Beged Mitzeira, Bais Menuga. Then is Zav and Zav, Zav, Shich V'Zera and Zova. Okay? So let's see now. So the reason of the Seder over here is because basically Tumas Yoledes is a Tumas Nida. Daber Bnei Yisrael Lemo Ish Gazriya V'Yol Zocha V'Tomo Shivas Yomim Kimei Nidas Dvoiso Titmo. And just to know for your own edification, this is not my chiddush. Drama in the Hakdama to Sefer to say the Ta'arais in Pirush Mishnah, he says like this: V'tumas Zovo Koleles Shiva Ovois, and then he says V'tumas. Then he says like this: V'yadu miloshen atera shetumas nida v'tumas yoledes dovo echod. Oma yisale kimei nidas devoisa titmo v'om v'tomo shvuayim kinidoso v'yesh benida oisam shiva avos atzmon. So the Rambam is going out of his way. There's an equation between Tumas Nida, because the Torah itself has clearly said that. Okay, and Yoledes. So therefore, there's Nida and Yoledes, and that's the Seder. The question is, Rabbi Yisai, that if you're ready to accept the base of the Torah has said that the Tumas Yoledes is a Tumas Nida, maybe we should flip it and say the opposite, and maybe say there's only one mitzvah and call it Tumas Nida, and Yoledes is an expression of Tumas Nida. Why have two mitzvahs? So what I was wondering, and maybe I'm mistaken or wrong or whatever it is, that you see, you have to ask yourself, and this is an important question. When you ask yourself, and you have a mitzvah of Tumas Sheretz, okay? So we know the Sheretz is Tomei, and we know how it's Metamei. The Vela, how it's Metamei. Okay. When you have Tumas Yoledes or Tumas Nida, are we interested only in how it's Metamei? Or we're interested and also part of the mitzvah is how and why it became Tomei. You see, when you talk about sheretz, that question is irrelevant, because if it's a shmona shortzim and it's dead, it's Tomei, and if not, it's not. When you talk about a yoledis and a nida, there's a very different phenomenon going on in why the yoledis is Tomei, because she had a leda of about the chol apochais and nefel, which was ben aboim yom mitzvos havlad, and we talk about a nida she had a flow of dam, which women usually have monthly. And the source of the tumor is very different. I just want to remind you that when we came to the mitzvah of avos korbanos on Zav and Zava, the Ram says that even though the korbanos of Zav and Zava are equated, however, the machayiv of korbanos Zav and Zava are different. The korbanos of machayiv of korban Zav of Zav is loiven, and of Zava is oidem. So the question is, maybe we should come to conclusions over here, the same thing. And there, the Ram says that since it's different, oidem and loiven, even though the korban is the same, it's two separate mitzvahs. Similarly, the source of the tumor in Nida and Yoledis are different. Even though the tumor is the same, it's two separate mitzvahs. However, Rabbi say, the possibility, I must say, is intriguing. Okay. However, I'm not at all sure that it's correct. Okay, and we have to evaluate something over here. And this I want to make you aware of. You see, let me just show you something. Here it is. See, when he talks about Zav and Ayin Daled, he says the mitzvah is im nilpo min hazivos, and also in Ayin Hey, where he talks about Zav im nilpo min hazivos. So it's a refuah from a chayli. Okay, the korban, the machayev of the korban is the refuah from a chayli. So if the chayli is cholok from Zav and Zovo, memela, it's two mitzvahs. What does it mean exactly when we say that a nida is tameh? We're not talking about a chayli. In Yoledis, we're also not talking about a chayli. Both of them are from the natural, that's the way mankind survives. Okay. So the Torah has declared the Tomeh. Is the declaration of Tomeh the reason why that's part of the Etzem Mitzvah? Even if it's not a chayli? And the reason that Yoledis and Nida, even though it's the same tumor, it's two separate mitzvahs because the phenomenon which each one individually causes the tumor is different. That's basically what I would suggest, that, we have to think about what's going on. Okay. Then you have the other question, in the same question the opposite way, but here you have chayli. You have to ask yourself, how does it play? And we'll Mitzvah talk about it. How does it play itself out in Mitzvah? And we'll see in Mitzvah. But this, I thought, is an interesting conversation, discussion in terms of these two mitzvahs, and I'm putting juxtaposition, and the Torah is made, Kimei nidas devois or titma. And it's not a refuah, because the Torah is irrelevant of the stop of the flow of the dam. It's just that if the flow stops, another tumor will come, which will be tumor zava. Or if the flow, we have to know exactly, has to stop, how the Ram Shita is, what a Shita is, and after you made Toya, and how it expresses itself, but that's not getting involved here. But we don't know that it's chayli at all. Now, here comes, and this will just start, I guess we'll pick this up in Mitzvah Hashem. Mitzvos Aseh he shetzivonu liyos odom mitzvah l'tomeh. U'mitzvah zu koleles kol dinei tzaras odom. Ma shemimeno tomeh u'ma shemimeno toho. So it's an odd thing. It's talking about Mishnah Toho. What does it mean, Mimena Toho? That's nothing to do with the tumor. So it's almost like, if we remember, in the mitzvah from Golus, in Shiur Zion, the Ram talks about any expression of Golus, and in certain cases he's not Goyla, like if it's Shogeg Kov the Mazid. But that's an expression of the mitzvah fikah. It's another expression of the mitzvah. And here, the mitzvah, tumas odom saras, there's sometimes it expresses itself in tumah, and sometimes it doesn't express itself in tumah. But in a mitzvah, in a mitzvah, which is basically a shranim, religious legislation, the Torah and the tumah can be mitzvahs the same way. Uma shemimeno tzricha hezger. Oh, Eina Tzricha. Eina Tzricha means that you're finished. It's all. Oh, right? Uma she'itztarach im hezge giluach, anesek. Kloima, tiglachas anesek. V'zula zeh mechelke diner ve'echus tumasa. So here, what he's probably doing is saying over Shiur Zion, because in Shiur Zion, he quotes of Sadia, that there are 10 mitzvahs or 11 mitzvahs. He says it's 11, I think the upside you might have 10 in Saras Odom, and he's saying all the different permutations, all the different all one mitzvah. And it's only fikah, and it comes in the Shiur Zion, and therefore it's only one mitzvah. And that, I think, explains Kuf Aleph. So Mitzvah Hashem, next time will be, we'll do Kuf Beis, and we'll discuss a little bit more, maybe in Kuf Aleph, Kuf Beis, and Gimel on. You should be zeicha to have a Chag Sameach, and as Rav Shapsi Sefer quotes, and then he saw from Rav Hertz, saw in the Siddur Maram that B'shas Rischa, which is more talks Menachos, that you need mitzvahs to be making mitzvahs B'shas Rischa. You shouldn't say Avinu Malkeinu Menah Magef Menach Chosecha, but Avinu Malkeinu Hoser Machlo Hoser Magef Menach Chosecha, which is Zeichet to Zeh B'Kol.
Amen.